Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. It is with gratitude, grace, and thanksgiving that we come here today to walk in a new way with our shadow, to remember, to find ways of how to be in relationship with ourselves, the ideas that we have of ourselves, of others, of society. This lesson of life that is presented to us as an opportunity to become cohesive with the intelligence of our mind, with the intelligence of our body and our essence, and cohesiveness within the three working together. That is what we bring all the time, every time that we sit down over in the Jaguar circle at the Path of Ish. Whether it's a podcast or a class or a ceremony, knowing that we can and never will grasp wisdom, but we leave our wisdom at the door, open to always exploring, staying curious, staying playful, and seeing these moments of life as an opportunity to learn. So here we are again with an opportunity to sit, to listen, to examine, take what you want, leave what you don't. Remembering that this is just one conversation of the many out there. Just one way of the many out there. There's no right, there's no wrong. And so today we bring in a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time. And we bring in the conversation, the ache of happiness. This has been something that has been sitting with me for over a month. And as it sat there and grew, I learned more from it. I wanted to record it immediately, but I've been able to sit with this for just the title for, almost a month. And the idea is for longer, and it's coming together. And I'm grateful for the interviews I've had lately because it expands my circle. It brings so much more medicine in, and I get to learn from other amazing beings out there who are walking in circleness, sharing their medicine. The reason I brought this idea of the ache of happiness is because there's this energy out there of nationalism that rises and falls with different time periods. My observations is there are certain rights that people expect. And in the United States, many people think that the right of happiness is in the Constitution, and it's not. It is in the Declaration of Independence. And it is not the right of happiness, it's the pursuit of happiness. And I want to talk about that because, again, we're talking about culture, a cultural exchange. Here we are, how this word or how this idea has formed in a society and how we live it versus the intention. I found this amazing article that I'm really enjoying where there was an interview back in 2014 that seems to be the highest rank, most read articles in the Emory News Center. And it is a conversation with Professor Brent Strawn. And he talks about about a thick understanding of the pursuit of happiness instead of a narrow one. And I love that I have found other people out here having this conversation. And if you are one who likes the written word and likes context, please go check out this article online. This article and the conversation and the grief that I am seeing a lot in many circles, and even in spiritual circles, modern spiritual circles. And I'm putting that into context because I'm not talking about older First Nation wisdom. In modern circles that are being created right now, calling themselves spiritual, yet still building their way based on the larger dominant cultural composition, I see that this ache of manifest destiny, now called manifestation, is really tied a lot to senses of self, of worth, of the ache of shame, and the ache of happiness. That if people aren't manifesting the life that they want with whatever techniques are out there, that there's something wrong with them. And why should it be wrong if they're not pursuing happiness in corporate worlds anymore, or in larger, boxier, or linear ways of thinking that the popular society trains us in? And so I want to take time to remember. Remember when and stay playful with the words of what happiness means, what pursuit means. Because what is happening, and I've seen throughout many, many conversations, throughout many, many years, is this equation of a very narrow sense of personal happiness. And if you are not personally happy, then there's something wrong with you. And then shame and guilt arises. How are you not good at being happy if it's your quote unquote right? And we all know that we live and have been trained to consume, and we consume. We're humans. We have to consume. But we keep consuming and consuming and consuming, and we will till we die. But the angst of it, this angst of consuming for happiness or distraction or opportunity to not feel things because they're very overwhelming right now, gets people into darker circles sometimes than before. I want to talk about and invite you to take just a moment right now. We'll take our 3 breaths and we'll do a quick check-in. So let's take our breaths. Eek, the 3 breath practice at the path of Ish, as we take our first breath in and out through the nose. Bringing the intelligence of our mind back into this time and place, in and out through the nose. Bringing the intelligence of our bodies back to this time and place, in and out through the nose. Bringing back the intelligence of our essence into this time and place. Now, I highly recommend doing this practice even before you start listening to this, and do it throughout. And let's do a check-in. How am I feeling right now in this moment? Physically, emotionally, mentally. And just start with those 3. How am I feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally right now with everything that's being talked about? And then for yourself, define what happiness means. And then for yourself, what does the pursuit of happiness mean to you? And then take another moment to define your right to be. And if you need to pause and just take time to journal, or if you just have quick things that come to you, please come back if you want later, or let us continue to explore this topic. The angst or the ache that I have seen is people chasing happiness. But if we read about a little bit, right? And pursuing means we are in full pursuit. We are acting. It is our responsibility. We need to find it. We need to chase it down. We need to conquer it. We have to go after it, right? And if you're on the hunt and you've been trained to be on the hunt, trying to find your kill, you know that it's only going to last you for so long before you have to go hunt again. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can change our definitions of what pursuit is, what seeking is, what happiness is. This article that I'm referring to at Emory University speaks to this other essay in 1964 by author Schlenzinger, stating that at the time of the Declaration's composition, the pursuit of happiness did not mean chasing or seeking, but practicing happiness. The experience of happiness, not chasing it, but as it says, actually catching it. And so here, if we put this into a different cultural context, a whole world opens up where pursuing does not become an ache. It will never be enough. You will never be enough. But what if we practiced happiness? What if we practiced being present? What if we looked at our relationship with happiness and started to have a discussion and a dialogue? How could your relationship change to it, to yourself, your role and responsibility, and your right? There are many ways to practice happiness. There are gratitude meditations. There are being present meditations. And I'm saying being present, not mindfulness. The reason I'm not using that is that it will trigger the mind to be the one responsible. And because we're in a circle wherein we invited the mind, the body, and the essence, we're asking the three of them, what is your idea, or how do you practice happiness? So let's do that. Take a moment and ask your mind, what does your mind think happiness is, and how does it practice it? Now ask your body, what feels happy for your body, and how does it practice it? And your essence, what is happiness to your essence, and how does it practice it? By taking time to not just rush ahead with one intelligence running the game, we can pause and start to see the complex way of how we operate. We can celebrate this complexity and know that the mind and the body, the essence, do not have to fight each other to be happy. The same thing is, we don't have to fight others to be happy, in the sense that one part of us does not have to lack so that the others would flourish. We cannot have a narrow idea of happiness, but a more robust one where flourishing and happiness transcends in our society tribalism, nationalism, where it transcends just the mind or the body or the essence. We are approaching the possibility of solving the ache, because that ache sometimes comes up when you see someone else being happy. They got their kill. They got their pursuit, and you didn't. And there's not enough. So here in this ache, collective ache, and we are in a time where there is great ache in the world. How can we start to think more organically and start redefining the stories that drive us, the goals and pursuits that define us, and how you have to prove your right to be or win it. And it can only be in relation to someone else not having it. Maybe the ache of happiness is this idea not of just yourself, but this global idea, this big idea that we have in many societies of lack. And this doesn't mean we're all going to have the same thing. This does not mean that there will not be suffering in the world. But can we start facing our fear of not having, and instead of grasping and attaining, can we maybe listen differently, look different, and be happy now? Being grateful now, not just because it's a practice that you fake it till you make it, but how can you embody it? Maybe we have to understand that, like all language that is limiting, we have to start using other words to break apart this focused and agreed upon definition of being and pursuing, and not just move it from the political to the spiritual without actually going through a transcendence. I was in a circle once where the elder was teaching and saying that in their language there was no word for nature. And many of the people coming from dominant culture just didn't get it. And so they had to explain a little bit more. And the best way to explain is to ask a question, right? What is your definition of nature? So now I'm asking you, what is your definition of nature? If you ask that to many people, they will start talking about trees and land and oceans and flowers. That is nature. They won't speak in a very different cultural context. If you ask people who have sat in my circle for a long time, what is nature? They might say, the cloud people inside my breath, in my lungs, outside and inside. And this was an example too, similar, that this elder used. Nature for them, they had no language of division because we are nature. To change things and the energy of things, we need to re-examine language, culture, and definitions. We need to pause and stay curious and say, maybe I I don't understand this. How do I change this? How do I redefine this? If you do not have a cultural reference outside of your own, go and find one and ask. We can sit here and speak head to head and not change anything. But when we sit down and we lay down our language and our knowledge, then the stories around all of that start breaking apart. I'm so grateful that I speak more than one language, but there are words that do not translate into other languages that have a feeling or emotion or a way of being. Maybe our ache of happiness would change if we changed our word of pursuit to practicing. And practicing, still not enough for me, but being, recognizing, being in a state where you are not separate from happiness. You are happiness. No matter what the emotions or your reaction to your situation, but what if happiness was a state, an energy of being that was natural, therefore it was part of you. Not just a tree outside, not just a place that once in a while you go out and walk in nature, but you are happiness itself. Not just the feeling, not just the practice, but the being in relationship where all of your parts are uniquely in and of themselves learning from you and from others. And that state of living is happiness. Breathing is happiness. Existing is happiness. This is just an opportunity to play with ways and not pursue them. So let us do a small meditation. And as we do, just reset yourself, stretch if you need to stretch, take a sip of water. And as you come back, ask yourself those 3 questions again. At this time now, how am I feeling in this moment now? Physically, emotionally, and mentally, in relationship to happiness. And then ask your mind, your body, and your essence, what is a state of happiness? What is the expression, the feeling, the color, the beingness of it? And as you take time, just allow yourself to wander around the circle, letting it hold all of your parts. The fear and the shame, the anxiety, the need to get it right, the ache, the joy, the love. Nothing is hidden in circle. And remember this, when you are pointing at someone with one finger, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. And I say this because here is an opportunity to refine and redefine our relationship and learn that how we are living, how we continue to live in a certain way, solving this problem of happiness, that maybe what we're doing is doing the same thing, even though we're calling it different things. There's great marketing out there, but it is the same energy, an underlying of lack and pursuit instead of practicing, instead of being. And we'll just take some moments in silence so you can be with all that is coming up and be with yourself. For those of you who are listening and students of mine, you know I would probably recommend asking these 3 questions as you imagine or physically walk around circle, having the east help illuminate, the south, the west, and the north. And as you take your time asking for inspiration, can you show yourself compassion? And with that, if you need more time, please pause this. But for those others, we will start coming back. Taking our 3 breaths again, in and out through the nose. Bringing back our essence to this time and place, in and out through the nose. Bringing our body back to this time and place, in and out through the nose. Bringing our mind back to this time and place. Dust yourself off. Humbly walk around the circle as we thank the east, the south, the west, and the north, and all the guardians of all the directions in whatever tradition you come from, who hold everything here, who do not let us escape, but make us face our conditioning so that we might get to the end of it and start creating from the unknown. And so I'd like to thank all my teachers and those who allow me to step into the unknown every day, and to the nature inside of me and the nature outside of me that is now excited to explore living in a state of happiness as something not outside of it, but just that it exists as an energy, just like I breathe and just like my blood flows. It is a state of being. Gratitude and grace. We hope to see you next week in the circle, or we hope to see you in one of our new circles over at the Path of Ish, or Cuatro Manos y Cinco Volcanes, with our new intro to cacao, and with our beautiful, amazing, challenging class, The Way of the Feather, where we continue to explore and decolonize and deconstruct ways of cultural norms so that we might learn a different way of being. So if you join us in one of those cultural exchanges or on the podcast this week or next week, thank you so much. Shade. Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.